When the season began, South Carolina and LSU both had high hopes, and right now they're feeling a little bit different for different reasons. LSU got off to a tough start with a loss to USC. Nothing to hang your hat about, but they definitely feel like they should be 2-0, and they feel like they missed some opportunities. South Carolina is 2-0, but I don't think a lot of South Carolina fans are exactly comfortable with that 2-0 start. So we'll take a look at both of these teams, preview the game, look at the players to watch, and take a look at what might happen. When you look at South Carolina's 2-0 record, you see that this is a group that's played pretty well defensively, but also has had its struggles offensively. The offense has simply not been what you expected, but you still found a way to start 2-0. The Old Dominion game was not exactly the first game you wanted, but you bounced back pretty well with a dominant win against Kentucky. And granted, the offense, like I said, it needs to figure some things out, but this is a South Carolina team, once again, that is 2-0. LSU comes in 1-1, like we said, lost to USC, bounced back with a win last week, although Nichols definitely made it very interesting, more interesting than LSU fans probably wanted. So there's definitely concerns on the LSU side as well. It's not that LSU has everything figured out. They have some things that they must address. Averaging 24 points per game, opponents are scoring pretty, I won't say easily, but pretty well against the Tigers. That is an area that they try to fix this offseason. And so far, that has not been successful, but we will keep an eye on what happens there. When you look at this series, LSU has absolutely dominated this series, and that's really not a surprise with what we've seen. But also, when you look at what South Carolina's had in years past, I thought that this one might have been a little bit closer than that. The burning question for both sides is for South Carolina is what's going on offensively? Is Lenore Sellers going to be the guy? Is the offense going to be explosive, or what's going on? The passing attack has been pretty bad. And I think that that needs to change pretty quick if you're going to win football games going forward. And doing that against LSU, it will be difficult. You're going to have to figure out ways to get explosive playmakers involved. And you also sometimes have to identify those explosive playmakers. So far, it's been a rocky start. For LSU, is who's going to step up on the defensive line. You had an injury that is hampering what is already a thin group in terms of depth. That is going to be a big question mark coming into this game. Now, the matchup that I'm excited to watch. Now, both of these teams have their own struggles, but they also have some players that are really exciting. Freshman defensive end Dylan Stewart has been taking the college football world by storm. He has been phenomenal so far through 2 games for South Carolina, but he also hasn't played anybody that is, I want to say, worth talking about, but definitely not any NFL players like Emory Jones and Will Campbell. So I'm excited to see what he can do against those two. That'll be a good measuring stick for where he's at and where he needs to go. And he is someone that is going to test both those guys. Those are guys that are going to the NFL. And it'll be fun to see where he stacks up against those two. LSU right now is currently a 7-point favorite, which speaks to how much more consistent LSU is despite its deficiencies. And it all starts with Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier is going to be in the NFL at some point. It's just a matter of when he decides to leave. And he is really fun to watch. A very talented arm and has plenty of wide receiver talent to hit downfield. Also has an exciting tight end in Mason Taylor. Kyron Lacey and Aaron Anderson are the two wide receivers that are leading the way right now, though you have some other players that are ready to step up or coming back from injury eventually. So this is a passing attack that feels like it's in good hands. Harold Perkins probably kind of flying under the radar right now. We haven't talked about him a ton because of LSU's struggles defensively. He is still someone who is very exciting on the defense side of the ball. Major Burns kind of the same way, a little bit lesser extent than Harold Perkins, but still someone who can have a major impact for this team. When you flip to South Carolina, now South Carolina had, I wouldn't say they had high expectations, but they had higher expectations than this. And Lenore Sellers right now is not meeting those expectations. He has struggled so far, and it doesn't look like he's got everything figured out quite yet. So this is going to be a tough test. If he is not up for it, then you maybe are looking to a backup to figure things out, or it's going to be a long night. Now, having Raheem Sanders next to him makes life a little bit easier. But again, if you're not throwing the football, it doesn't matter who's next to you in the backfield because teams are not going to respect your passing attack and they're going to load the box and try to stop the run. So Sanders is not going to be super effective. The defense has been, I think, really underrated so far. Debo Williams is one of the best linebackers in the SEC. Bam Martin Scott is a guy who, in my deep dive coming into this year, was someone that I thought could be a breakout player. So far, he is having a solid season through the first two games. And we talked about Dylan Stewart before, the phenomenal freshman that is ready to take the world by storm once again in week 3, and he's going to have to do it against tougher competition. So when you look at this game, both teams obviously have their things to work on. It feels like LSU's in a little bit better place than South Carolina, but again, both sides have certain things that must change and must improve. And right now, if you're picking between these two teams, you probably feel a little bit better about LSU, but also teams felt, and I should say fans, analysts alike, felt better about Kentucky than they did South Carolina last week. So maybe it's a similar result as last week, but also it could be very different with LSU being a team that people trust a little bit more.